Hi, my name's Linda Lovisa and welcome to my channel. This afternoon, what we're going to be exploring is taking a sketch that you've done and translating that information to a painting once you get back to your own studio. So this particular sketch was done when my husband and I went on a canoe trip to Myrtle Lake in Wells Gray Provincial Park, British Columbia. And this was one of the views, one of the days that we were sitting on the beach, and it was quite a cloudy day, so we couldn't go out on the water, but I took some time to sort of sketch out what was happening on the horizon across the lake. So let me show you some of the clues from that sketching day, because that's important when you're doing your sketches to sort of indicate for example, how the land slopes. So I used my pen, and I was just using a drawing pen, and I did some marks here on the slope so that I could see how the shape of that land mass was, how those hills, the mountains actually rolled. I also did some shading, so I know that this whole area here, the evergreens are all in shadow. And I also know that this area here had a little bit more light on it, and I left this completely white. So that means that's where the highest light is. So let's see how we can translate that information to a canvas without having the actual photograph. So here we go. What I've done is I have given my canvas a tonal wash, and I use the red light. And you're probably wondering why would you use red light? Well, the red light is a great base for the color of the distant mountains. It's a great base for when I start to put the sky in and the clouds. And the red light is also not going to interfere when I start to add the greens. If I had done a yellow tonal wash, which I often do, when I go to do the clouds, or if I have to do anything in the sky area that's in the blue shades, I guess, I could turn my sky into more green, and I don't really want that. So let's get started. Okay, so there's my reference, and I'm going to start off with the sky. Just going to use a nice big brush here. It holds a lot of paint, so let's get some paint on there. I'm going to use the white, and I do have on my sketch the way that the clouds, the shape of the clouds. I'm not going to worry about that just yet. Let's get some white paint in here. There we go. How easy is that? Now this would be a block-in, by the way. I have referred to blocking in before in other videos. So this is not going to be a completed painting in that sense. But at the end of the block-in, what's nice about that is it gives you the opportunity to step back and see if there's any adjustments that need to be made. Now I'm also bringing that white down here too. The water is down here. And I'm just going to bring in a little bit more color and stroke downwards. There we go. Now let's kind of draw out those clouds. Now, I know that I have a dark cloud here because I've shaded it. So I'm going to pick up the ultramarine blue, and I'm using the same brush that I did the block-in with the white. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of the red light, and I'm just going to do this for now. There we go. It doesn't have to be the exact same shape. And so we've got a big band of clouds here, so I'm going to just draw it out for now. We've got something happening like this, and like this. And of course, you know, it doesn't have to be identical. It's really just capturing that moment. And let's get some cloud shapes in here like that. And we've got a dark area down here. And there we go. Get that shadow in there. And let's bring in that other cloud back here. Here we go. And over. There we go. Now, I'm just going to echo some of that color into the water. There we go. Now, let's pick up a little bit of cobalt blue to add to that. Cobalt blue over here. I'm going to dot that across the top of the sky, like so. I always paint my sky areas white first. That way, when you add the blue, you just add it a little bit at a time, and it's not, you know, overpowering. Because sometimes if you mix the blue and the white on your palette and then you bring it to your canvas, what can happen is you've got it too dark, and then it's going to take you a half a tube of paint to get the lighter color. So why not start with the white and then add the blue? Yeah, makes sense, doesn't it? So that's what we're doing. And as I'm using my brush, I'm of course rolling the color onto my canvas by just rolling my brush, and I'm also tapping it. So I'm not doing like a really hard stroke. I'm just giving it a light stroke, and I'm moving the color around. And as we know, clouds are not perfectly white, so I'm bringing in some shadows. Now, I didn't indicate those shadow areas on my sketch, but I'm just kind of loosely interpreting the time of the day. Storm had just passed, and the clouds were just rolling by. Earlier that day, the water had been really rough on the lake. We were very happy to have found this lovely sand beach to park ourselves for the night and just watch the storm go by. And that's exactly what I'm going to try and capture. So there we go. Now I'm going to return to the sky a little bit later, but I just want to kind of get that feeling of a lot of movement happening up there. There we go. Now I can just flip my brush and come down here with some of that blue. I need more paint. Picking up cobalt blue and the ultramarine blue together, double loaded on my brush. Tap that in. Bring a little bit of that dark to the top corners of my canvas to keep the viewer interested in what's happening. If you darken your corners, that draws the viewer in. So just by darkening your corners, just that little bit helps. Now let's go back down here. And as you can see, I'm using a vertical stroke. There we go. Now I'm going to pick up some more white, and I'm going to stroke across. Now, often we're tempted to just do our water and our sky and just, you know, use our brush and we just go straight across. When I'm doing skies, I'm cross-hatching, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. When I'm doing water, I'm stroking down, and then I stroke across. So the water is quite calm here because the storm has passed. So I'm just stroking down. Now, I need to just adjust my canvas a little bit because I do have, as you can see, I have a really good edge here of paint. What does that tell you? Yes, I paint every single day. And, you know, I've often thought of scraping that off, but you know what? I don't know, maybe it'll be worth a lot of money one day. So here we go. So I'll just set it up here, and then I can get right down to the bottom of that. There we go. And almost there. So I'm picking some of the colors from up here, bringing them down, and just kind of straighten. Always make sure that your horizon line, where the water and the mountain or land meet, should be level. There we go. And because water is like a mirror, I'm just going to bring in a little bit more of the lighter color. I have no indication here, no colors listed as to what was happening. I did do that on some of the other sketches, but I'm just going to use what I'm familiar with, the sky being reflected in the water. And the mountain colors will also be reflected in the water. Once I get this in here, I'm going to bring a little bit here. It'll be mostly some of the greens that will be reflected there. But I like to get that color in. Again, I'm stroking downwards, and then I'm going to stroke across. There we go. We can always lighten that again later. Again, just to remind you that this is the block-in stage. So during the block-in stage, it's all just kind of loosely deposited, the paint deposited. Just going to have some fun in the sky here for a minute. There we go. Got some really great colors happening up there right now. Just going to bring in a little bit more white there. Now it's not real obvious, but as I'm working, I'm turning my brush. And there was a tiny bit of yellow that was picked up on my brush, but you know, I'm not going to panic about it. I'm just going to move it around because there was some light hitting those clouds. And there was some light hitting the top of this mountain and this one here as well. And there's a little bit of backlighting back here. I'm just going to add a little bit of that there. And bring some of that down. There we go. Now, let's deal with this. So I'm going to set this brush down here for now. And I've got this one loaded up with some yellow. And I'm just going to see what I've got going on here. So now I'm going to, my brush was a little bit, I hydrated a little bit too much, so it's a little bit thinner than I like, but that's okay. Picking up the ultramarine blue, so my brush is double loaded. So started off with the yellow, and now I've got the ultramarine blue on the end. So when I've picked up a dark color, what I want to do is I want to deposit it in a dark area, because that's basically what's going to happen anyway. So why battle out the light areas? Let's go right down to where those trees are in shadow down here. And as I'm moving my brush along, the green is getting lighter because, of course, the first few strokes where the blue was picked up, but then I just move it along. Oh, and I just realized that I put this up too high. Anyway, okay, let's start that again. Down here is my shadow area. So this is the mountain. So let's just move this along. No big panic. And I'm using my sketch here to indicate the shape of that mountain. The shape of that, or the form of it, I guess. And let's do that. Bring that over here. And it's a little bit lighter than I want at the top there, but that's okay. And just move this down a little. You know, things happen. I don't panic about anything. you just, when it comes to painting, you can go back into it many times. So I'm picking up more of the ultramarine blue, and this time some of the yellow light, yellow medium. That was the yellow deep, that first application of yellow. Now I'm going to just do a stroke here, and picking up more of the yellow medium, and I'm just going to do a nice big stroke here, right down, and bring that up a little bit. How about some more paint? I don't use any gel mediums, by the way. It's not that I don't ever use gel mediums, but if I'm doing gel mediums, it's more in the experimental sort of stage of painting. But I like to use a nice amount of paint on my brush. Not only does it flow nicely, but you don't have to worry about that, one area being glossy and another area looking flat. If you use the same consistency of paint on your brush, then you're not going to have that problem. So the type of paint that I'm using is TriArt. It is a Canadian company and very comparable to Liquitex. Nice heavy body. Let's stroke that over. Here we go. A little bit more of the yellow. And cobalt blue over here. So just picking up the cobalt blue with my brush and bringing that over. Now, one of the things that I just want to note is that in my sketch I have a horizontal, an angled stroke up here. So that means that the light was catching that angle of the mountain. Now this is my lightest part of the mountain, so I'm just going to pick up a little bit more of the yellow light this time, which is going to really brighten that up. And it might not stay quite that bright in the overall completed painting, but I really just want to, and this area here, I don't have any shadows at all in this area. So that tells me that the light was hitting this head on. So let's do that. It's always interesting to see how things start to come together. Now there's not much detail here because this mountain here was quite a ways away. I'm just going to cut into the clouds a little bit here. There we go. And there. Just going to do that. And bring that down. And let's bring some light over here. A little more. And I will shape this a little bit better later. But let's just establish that first. Now, we have an angled stroke going like this, all the way down. Pick up some more paint, picking up cobalt blue, and just because I just picked up the cobalt blue, I'm going to deposit it here, and I notice that I have a stroke that's a vertical stroke. So that tells me that that part of the mountain was straight down and that there was less light there. So let's really exaggerate the color there a little bit more. And then it switches to another angle here. But let's make that quite there, a little bit more visible. just by adding some cobalt blue. And then we've got an angle that goes like this over here, getting that side of the mountain. Bring that down. And then there's another little patch in here that just kind of goes straight across like this. So by following this information, maybe we can get this mountain to look similar to what I saw. Now let's change that angle, bring that down, and let's bring this down all together. And more paint, important. Now picking up ultramarine blue with the yellow medium this time instead of the cobalt. I'm just going to bring that down. When I've picked up a little bit too much paint, what I do is I just bring it down to another area where I'm going to need some paint instead of, you know, worrying about. So I'm just going to bring that down and bring that up, like so, and then it comes down. So using the stroke work in my drawing, trying to capture that mountain. Now I need to go back up here, bring some of that there. I love the cobalt blue. It's one of my favorite colors, one of my many favorite colors. It just really creates a lot of depth with your greens. And let's bring this over here. Now we've got an area here that's much lighter, so let's fix that. I love the contrast here. So let's pick up some of that yellow light, and I'm going to just tap it in like so. For now. And then I'm going to work here, and then I'm going to do a nice transition between these two so that it doesn't look like just like a yellow brick road, so to speak, in the forest there. Okay, there we go. Bring that down. And I also have this over here. Let's bring that down too. There we go. Now, let's go over here. So, picking up the ultramarine blue, dab, dab, dab. And I'm going to do this down here too, dab, 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 because I'm going to work both those areas at the same time, or, you know, close together. Okay. Now up here, I'm going to use the yellow deep. And I'm just going to start to blend that in. Now, in my sketch, the stroke work is straight down. So what that tells me is it's a whole bunch of smaller trees, and they're, you know, they're all gathered close together. And so I'm just going to use a shorter stroke in a moment here. Once I get the paint laid in here, I'm going to use a shorter stroke and a little bit more paint, picking up more paint and blocking that in. And some more of the yellow deep. And I'm going to add some red to that. Now, the red medium, I'm going to just kind of, whoops, need to pick up more paint there. So I just picked up the red medium on the corner of my brush, and I'm just adding a little bit. Now, be really careful when you add red. Red is so powerful. It will just take over everything if you're adding too much. And notice how I just picked it up just a tad on the corner of my brush. And now I'm just going to blend it in. It's going to give me a little bit more of a mossy color. And it doesn't take very much to alter that. There we go. Bring that over. Now, as I mentioned earlier, these trees are far away. So to represent those trees that are a little bit further away. I'm going to use a shorter stroke. This area here, as you can see, I've been just kind of building some of the different values in the greens. I used a little bit of cobalt in here. I'm going to add a little bit more. There we go. Now I'm going to switch to a stiffer brush. This one here has longer bristles. So with the longer bristles, you're going to end up with more flexibility. What's a good example here? So this one here has longer bristles, so you're going to end up with more flexibility. So this brush here with the longer bristles is giving me that flexibility. So by switching to a shorter bristle, gives me stiffer, not completely stiff, but it does give me a little bit stiffer stroke, and that way it's also smaller. You can see the dimension is a little bit smaller, and I can have a shorter, sharper stroke representing the trees back here. So before I do that, I'm just going to condition my brush. So again, conditioning your brush, basically you're just dipping it in the water so that you know, it absorbs the paint. Let's get this here blocked. I've got some paint deposited there, but I need a bit more paint. And I'm going to use the Arlide Yellow Deep here. Arlide Yellow Deep is another gorgeous color by TriArt. It's one of beautiful color. And just get this part in here so that we have an idea of what's happening. And as I mentioned earlier, getting that horizon line nice and straight where the water and your land mass meets. Getting that line nice and straight is a good idea. There we go. Just get that blocked in there. Still in the block-in stage, and just going to bring that color here. A little bit of a darker color right there. So I'm just pulling that color up, locking that in, adding another layer. What my sketch tells me is that these trees were quite dark in the foreground. So I want to represent that. So what's really neat about this scene is the play of light after the clouds have gone by, or as they're going by, the light is changing constantly. So let's bring this in here a little bit darker yet, and then I'll go back into this area here and deal with the reflection on the water. So I'm adding more of the ultramarine blue. I'm also going to pick up some of the red deep. And remember, I said earlier, always be very careful when you go into the reds. And so the red and the green are complements. So as I'm blending the green with the red, it's going to give me a really nice dark green, really nice rich dark green. And I'm moving my brush back and forth in different directions. Whoops, carried it over a little bit too much there. So back into this area here. So while I'm working in this background area here, I'm just going to set this brush on my palette for now and load a fresh brush. So I'm just going to bring it over here, move that over, bring this over here. Okay, so this one is hydrated. I'm going to start to work in this area. The first thing I want to do is I want to lighten this slope. So now this is just yellow light added directly to my canvas. I really like portraying the drama in nature, and you'll find that a lot of my paintings have really high light areas, and I just love that, portraying that part of nature, the changing light and how different it reacts, how the light changes the land in so many ways. And I'm just using a very, very short stroke. And notice how I'm taking the yellow light and I'm bringing it into the area where I was using the ultramarine blue and the yellow deep, and also the yellow Arlide yellow deep, which is another really gorgeous color. Let's see here. Bring this down. Okay. Slowly. I'm just going to give that a tap there. Now this here needs to be brighter and this needs to be darker. So those are the things now that I'm starting to play with. Bringing in a little bit more light, a little bit more shadow. Picking up the ultramarine blue with the yellow medium. So this base here is a nice dark base. So as I start to layer on top of that, I'm going to create some depth. And that's what you want in this area here. You don't want it to look flat, so you want to create some depth. So as I'm adding another layer, and my brush is double loaded with the ultramarine blue and the yellow medium, picking up more paint now, making sure I have enough paint on my brush. And as I'm gently tapping, I'm altering, going from one side of my brush to the other, and just by twisting. And as I'm holding my brush, I'm rolling it. So it's this little technique here that works really well for you because it moves the paint around that's on your brush. It moves it from one place to another, and you deposit. And you're doing a different mark. When you're depositing a variety of marks of color, if you think of it that way. There we go. Bring that down and slowly bring it down. There we go. And as I'm getting closer to the bottom here, I'm bringing in a little bit more of that darker, and I need a little more paint. Again, ultramarine blue and the cadmium yellow medium. A little bit too much yellow there, so pick up more blue. Just tap it on my brush. And move it around. So when you've got quite a bit of paint on your brush, don't forget to just move it around. You know what I often see is where people, if they've got too much paint on their brush, what they do is they wipe it on a cloth or back onto their palette. Why not just put it somewhere on your canvas? Anywhere. There's always somewhere that you can put it on your canvas, and then that way you're adding to another area and you're not wasting the paint by, you know, putting it on a cloth or in your water bucket, heaven forbid. Here we go. Bring that over. Move some more of that paint over here. And just shape this a little bit more. Pardon me. There we go. Stepping back is a really important part of the painting process. I don't do that very often with these videos because I'm afraid of what I'm going to step on. So there we go. But now I'm getting sort of that look where, you know, the foreground is a little darker. This is still in shadow. We've got the bright light over here. This is in shadow over here, medium light over here, bright light again over here. The sun is coming through those clouds and giving it spots of light. So let's go back. Give this some color. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to finish this completely in the time that we have together, but I do want to add a little bit of that reflection onto the water so that you can have a little bit of an idea of what it's going to look like. And of course, there's a lot that has to happen yet with this scene, and I'm just going to bring that down. There's our tree line, our dark tree line over here. Let's bring some of this color down like that. And now let's bring in some of that reflective color from up here. Now earlier, I don't know if you saw me do this or not, but I tapped this area. So in tapping this area, all I was doing is just checking to see how damp the paint was. So that when I do bring some of those reflections onto the water, it's not going to blend too much. There are times when you want it to, but not in this case. So I'm going to tap my brush on my palette. Let's get this horizon line a little bit more defined here. It doesn't have to be. There we go. It's a little bit better than what it was. Picking up the ultramarine blue with the yellow, yellow deep, or light yellow actually. And I'm just going to start to, it needs to be darker, bring in some of this. Now this is not complete here, but it'll just give you a little bit of an idea. And it's probably not going to be straight, just because whenever I'm demonstrating, my lines are never straight. But this will give you a little bit of an idea on how to handle the reflection. And it's very similar stroke to when I added the white and the blue earlier. I, was stroking downwards, and then I'm going to stroke across. So let's get this right to the end here. We've got some of the lighter that would possibly be reflected in the water. So I'm just going to add a bit of that. And now this is not, the only way to do water, by the way. This is how I start bringing it in, and I'm just going to pick up this brush with the white and the blue that I had earlier. Picking up a little bit of that cobalt blue, and I'm just going to bring that across. And I know that the water wasn't perfectly calm because I have some strokes here showing that there was some movement in the water. So I'm going to tap my brush on my palette to move the paint, pulling my stroke through. Now, I have a long way to go yet, But I hope that you enjoyed this demonstration today, and I will work on this. I'll continue to work on it. So this is how you can take an inspiration from a trip you've been on, and you can, you know, bring it home. Now this trip was many years ago, so I'm just using the information that I got at that moment and recreating it on the canvas today with the colors that I'm trying to remember. And I hope you enjoyed today's class. Thank you for watching today, and if you would like to know more about my classes, you can log on to my website, lindalovisaartcanada.ca. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification button if you want to see more, and have a wonderful day. Bye for now.